Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the weekend reviews edition of a Celtic Down Under podcast, hosted by myself, Sean, joined by Anthony and Paul. I've just noticed right now that my voice is sounding a little husky. I'm just 1 week removed from hospital, and I appear to have picked up some sort of infection after my surgery. So I apologise in advance for sounding a bit, I don't know, Barry White maybe. Rhyming slang intended. How are you doing, Anthony?
I'm good, Sean. Good to have you back. We sort of missed you last week, so good to know that you are sort of on the mend, as it were. Good weekend. Wife was away, so got out to the Celtic Club on Saturday night. Caught with the man himself down in the bottom of your screen. Had a few pints and. Yeah, it was a relatively comfortable affair compared to the Motherwell game where it was like we were, chewing our fingernails off. So yeah, it was a little bit more dominant and one-sided. So good to be there at Johnny Fox's on Saturday night to see that one.
Yeah, I was tempted to come along, but I'm just in no condition, to be totally honest. I can barely stand, never mind walk. Paul, did you take up to any shenanigans you want to snitch on Anthony about?
No. I think Anthony went up to other stuff earlier in the day, so he'd had a couple already. So
Any late night tackles?
It's rare that it's not me that's had the most. So no, it was good. My wife was away actually this weekend as well on a girls' weekend, so I had a very tame few days. So yeah, it was nice to get out for a few pints and. Yeah, the game was relatively straightforward, as Anthony says, and we'll get into the detail. But yeah, I ended up having a few more beers than I intended because after the club, me and a mate went on to another pub, which I had a reasonably sketchy memory of. I did remember the kebab afterwards, but the in-between section was a bit of a blur. So yeah, luckily I pulled up okay on Sunday. Albeit I still got a bit of a mouthful from the wife saying that I hadn't done enough chores, despite I thought I'd done a reasonably good job. So her bar's obviously higher than mine. But as this tends to be the case, to be honest, I think in most relationships. So yeah, other than that, yeah, good weekend, great result, and yeah, good to catch up with Anthony for a beer or two, along with a few other boys that we knew.
Was it busy in Johnny Fox's, or was it just the sidebar that was open, or did they open up the upstairs?
Just upstairs.
Just upstairs. It got bizarre, but it was pretty. People were like trundling in a bit later. It was when we got there kind of early, I guess, but it was pretty empty early doors, and yeah, it kind of picked up a bit, but it wasn't as busy as the Motherwell game, which surprised me. Like it's probably the most, and since then it's probably been the best timed fixture. 8:30 on a Saturday night in Perth is about nearly as good as it gets for us. So I was a wee bit surprised it wasn't a bigger turnout, but yeah, it kind of filled up a bit more as the sort of game wore on. But yeah, still a good atmosphere, a bit of singing later on.
What the Glasgow pubs would do to have a Saturday night kick-off of a Celtic game, they would be absolutely rolling in it if they could do that, right? But then, the police would then have to deal with the fallout from that, which wouldn't be as great. So, swings and roundabouts in that sense. I watched the game from my bed, just about, stayed awake for it. Yeah, it was pretty one-way traffic, obviously aided by Ross County correctly, going down to 10 men pretty early on. And from then on, I believe the game finished with 39 shots at goal from Celtic. I think 13 on target, something like that. XG
16,
of about
I think I read.
4.8 or something along those lines. But 16 on target, sorry. Yeah, 16 on target, 13 saves. So it was like Ross Laidlaw got man of the match on Sky Sports. Not really surprising, given that he did really keep the scoreline respectable. And we keep saying, in hindsight, comfortable, but honestly, did anyone actually feel comfortable at 1-0, 67 minutes? Did anyone actually feel comfortable? There's always a chance you're going to lose a goal at that point. I think until it goes 2-0, you're never actually comfortable, despite it really not being possible to be more dominant. Anthony?
No, I was pretty comfortable. Compared to the St Mirren game, because I actually got a chance to sit and watch the St Mirren game on Saturday afternoon, so I kind of almost did a bit of a double header. I watched that at lunchtime, and then I caught up with some friends, and then went into the Celtic club that night. So at the moment, I'm still trying to sort of separate the St Mirren game from the Ross County game a little bit, just some of the things. So if I start going off on a bit of a tangent, or I'm talking about something that didn't happen in the Ross County game, it may or may not have happened in the St Mirren game. But compared to that game, that felt a lot more edgy, and you felt St Mirren had a threat. Ross County didn't have that, and then in fairness, they went down to 10 men very early on. And let's get the elephant in the room, I suppose. I mean, that's a red card as far as red cards will ever be red cards. I mean, very disappointing that the referee, I can't remember his name, but
David Munro.
David Munro, the fact that he was about 5-6 yards away and he couldn't pick that as a straight red is a bit disappointing. Because that is a leg breaking tackle. The fact that he didn't have weight on his foot planted on the ground, I think it's the fact that saved him there. Because otherwise, that could have very nasty, long-lasting consequences. So Ross County rightly down to 10 men, and then they'd sort of set the stall out before that they were going to, 2 banks of 5 and sit deep and not really sort of presses or put us under too much pressure. So obviously, when they lose a man, you kind of got to double down on that strategy, because that's obviously what you've practiced all week. So, apart from if they manage to get a set piece or a corner, then I couldn't really see a way that they were going to get to us in open play. So, it was always a matter of when we were going to score that first goal, and few efforts chalked off for various reasons, which we've been discussing a bit. But you're right to credit Ross Laidlaw. He did as much as he could to keep them in it. Kept him in it for a lengthy period of time, given the fact that I say they went down to 10 men so early on. But we were dominant. We were creating chances, putting them under pressure, which we're fully expected to do. And compared to the St Mirren game, it was just a lot more one-way traffic, so it felt a lot more comfortable. And I 1-0, I'm going, we're going to score more goals, but it's not going to end up 1-0. But at no part in my nagging mind, I mean, admittedly, I was a few beers deep by then. I wasn't sitting there going, oh no, I'm worried that they're going to drop the park and score. So I thought it was relatively comfortable away from home, as we've probably been pretty much all season, really. But dominant, and I guess and I'll flick this one to Paul, so I'm not talking for too much longer. But obviously, we had a little bit of discussion before the match about the changes that were made to the team, because Brendan Rodgers did bring in the changes. So there's a little bit of concern, not concern, but a little bit like, well, has he made too many changes? Like, has he been a wee bit too a bit cheeky, making as many changes as he has? But then obviously you flick back to the Hibs game, which was the weekend before, and we were a bit flat and looked quite one pace. So it's maybe sort of saying, well, we're going to have a look and see what we've got here. So Paul, what was your take?
Yeah, I think we spoke in the pub when the team was announced that 6 changes, albeit 6 sounds a lot. CCV was one of those, so you're kind of expecting that. I think there's always a balance with these things. He made or Postecoglou made 3 or 4 changes when we got beat by St Mirren that time, and people had a huge panic. I was surprised at some of the changes. I think Bernardo getting the nod over home surprised me a little bit. But nice to see O'Reilly get a rest. I didn't think he would mix up the midfield quite as much as he did. I was kind of, Yang did well, but I was sort of on the fence whether he would get a crack as well. Again, back to the changes. I was a big advocate for O getting a start, and I'm glad he did. And he did. He's pretty unlucky not to get a goal. I think his overall performance justified that pick. And to my point last week, you weren't here, Sean, but it was obviously it was less about does he deserve to be starting over Kyogo, and more about we're gonna need him over the next sort of couple of months, and the more time he gets on the pitch, hopefully the more match ready he'll be. So for him to get 90 minutes under his belt was more than I was expecting, but it was great. And yeah, look, to your point, Sean, I get it at 1-0. There's always, a mild concern, but I'll be honest, maybe it was a pints as well. But I really wasn't concerned. Like, they had 3 shots all game, nothing on target. It really, after the sending off, became a defense against attack exercise. And obviously then they sacrificed Jordan White, which is, you know, one of their main sort of assets and targets in terms of attacking sort of setup. So yeah, I wasn't really, obviously you want the second and the third just puts the gloss in it. But really, you know, but for Laidlaw would be much, much further ahead. I'll just say 1 point on the sending off. I don't want to sort of take up too much more time on that. I get it. It looks bad. I don't think there's malice there. I'm not saying it's not a red card. It's a red card all day long. But I think Malky Mackay said it in his interview, and I think the players come out since and said it, is that he just didn't see him coming. Like he's going for that loose ball, and Yang comes on his blind side, nicks it away, and you know, obviously when you slow it down and stop it, it looks really, really bad. I don't think he's going to do the player, but when the contact is made like that, it's got to be a red.
Intent is irrelevant to the rules. Do you know what I mean?
No,
Like,
hang on.
like if you,
well, I'm not just talking about the rules.
Do you remember the one where Nani a few years ago was watching long ball coming over his head, and he catches the goalkeeper in the face with his studs?
Yeah, I'm not talking about it not being a red. It's a red all day long. But you know, Anthony made the point.
Oh no, I'm not. Sorry, I'm not.
It could be a leg breaker. It could be a leg breaker, and it could be. But for me, there's no intent there. So that I don't think
his defense that he didn't see the player. Like, it's not a defense.
Well, but even Mackay said it's still a red card. I think what he's saying is he's defending his player to say he didn't try and do Yang. And I'm saying I agree with that. I don't.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. But it doesn't stop it being a red card. I do agree with that. Yeah. I agree with your point.
I guess that's all. That's the only point I was making, is that I don't think he went to do the player, but it's still a red. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you said, it's not about intent, right? And you can still be dangerous with it. You know, like, it's why would any player try and even attempt an overhead kick these days with the way things are going, right? You need to have like 3-4 yards of space to even try something like that. Otherwise, you're just getting pinged straight away. That said, Liam Scales had a go at one, didn't he? And I think
it's like his second attempt in 2 or 3 games or something. Like, he needs to calm it down. Like,
and look, and I think part of the reason why I feel nervous about these things is it feels like the game is rigged a bit at the moment. Like, I'm pretty annoyed at Stephen Naismith for his comments where he came out on Sunday and said, "Oh, it feels like everything is going for Celtic and Rangers." I'm like, hold on, how did we get dragged into this? We were the ones, you know, the last time we played at Tynecastle, Michael Smith handball, you know, stuff like that. I don't know how we were getting embroiled, getting dragged our name into this crap.
It's a standard, isn't it? They're always pull boat. Like, nobody will point the finger just at them getting decisions.
Well, certainly not Stephen Naismith anyway. No, like, you know, you're not going to get it and balance that with him. No. Yeah. And he's a deflection king at the moment anyway, because he must be like, you know, one loss away from losing his job. But anyway, like,
the Jambos on Twitter, I've lost their shit over the last 24 hours. They want him gone. Even the ones that were maybe showing a little bit of calm.
But they roll over against the Huns every time anyway. So, like, 3-0, I wasn't, so 3-1 or whatever ended up. No surprises there. Like, all right, they kept it nothing each at half time. Bravo. But I mean, apparently it was turgid and they didn't really create any chances themselves. So yeah, he's a dead man walking. But to pick up your point, I suppose when we're talking about that game, David Dickinson doing the wee smirk when Rangers went 2-0 up. I mean, case in point of why you're thinking maybe the game is rigged or that there's like certain forces out against you. But I mean, far out, like, hide it a wee bit better. But you know, it's a bit of a worry. And then, all right, well, we're talking about referees, we're talking about officiating. I mean, not even been able to use the right frame for the offside decision for Maeda, because does a wonderful job finishing that pass. So it was Ralston over to Bernardo, who plays it over to Maeda. Maeda runs on, and then Maeda's cut it across. And very much like an Ange goal from last year, very direct, you know, whipping the ball across. And O's made that run, and he's made a really good connection and stored. And you're thinking, oh, this is good. Like, you know, he deserves that. He was playing well. And then you see the offside decision, and the ball had already left his foot on the still that they'd used. So that's an Andrew Dallas special right there. And then apparently they've wound it back one frame more and made apparently it was still a bee's dick offside. But you know, they timed it that right.
I'm going to talk about that because now here's my point. Do you know sometimes, right, when you're watching a game and you think somebody's hit a good shot or a good pass, and it turns out the ball was actually going out for a throw-in in the wrong direction, and it's just because of the perspective. You can't really tell where the ball's moving. That camera angle, there's nothing anyone can say in this world that can convince me that VAR camera angle is better than the angle that assistant referee had who was running alongside it. There's nothing you're going to convince me that says that was offside, because if you look at the line drawn in the Ross County player's back, it's halfway along his back, first of all. The way the position of his body, there's no way from that camera angle to even tell what part of his body is furthest along. There's just no way to tell. Like, they've gone like Andrew Dallas, is it? Yeah. It's just gone with, okay, this part of his body is furthest to the right. Well, that's not that's like drawing a line on the y-axis instead of the z-axis, which we're trying to judge this on.
Perception thing, yeah.
It's like almost 90 degrees in the wrong direction that they're drawing this line. It doesn't make any mathematical sense to me whatsoever. And I am not having that is clear and obvious. I'm not having that is a better decision than the linesman who's running at the correct angle for it. Unless they scrap this Poundland crap and start getting more cameras in. Like if we had the Champions League version of VAR with like the Hawkeye and the snapshot replays, I'm convinced that would have been onside and given as onside if we had that.
Well, it's so tight. I mean,
at least you'd know.
Well,
it's not a guess, is it? It's a guess. With the technology we've got, it's still a guess. And what's the point in having VAR if it's a guess, right? On offsides. Obviously, other stuff is an opinion, which is why the ref gets pulled across to look at monitors and the like. But offside is supposed to be black and white, and it's anything but at the moment. This is nearly as daft as the Jota goal at Far Park last season.
Oh, and who was the VAR referee that day?
Big Dickinson.
Yeah, man, it's bad. It's bad. Like they can't. Like, what are they doing? Do you know what I mean? Like they're.
I hate the camera angle at Dingwall as well. It's just it's a horrible game to watch. Like it's just so low down, and you can't get any sense of scale on that park whatsoever. Like you compare it to obviously I'd watched the St Mirren game at Celtic Park earlier that day, and just the comparison is just it's just a crap watch. And I know there's not much you can do about that, but like it's just I think it's just one of those oddities of Scottish football, I guess.
I had this about 3 times in a row Saturday night in my ear. I hate this angle. It's like, you've said it twice. That's enough.
What would are they using? Is that a security camera that they're showing? I don't even know. Like honestly, it feels like it. Like where's that camera angle? Like when you go to these stadiums, they're just putting people on scaffolding. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what they're doing. They're sticking a camera up in scaffolding for Sky Sports. I've been there, I've seen it. Like it's I don't know, man. Like it's a shambles. I get it. Scottish football, but there's how much money comes in every year from European participation. Invest some of it. If you're not going to make the refs full time, at least give them good technology. They're just half-arse and everything, to be honest.
Well, we're on about half-arse refereeing. You're the resident ref, showing a clear and obvious error on the Scales goal. I think not, but that one should not have been disallowed in the first place. But I don't think there's enough because O's got his arm up. There's not clear and obvious grounds to overturn it. So it should have been a goal. Should have been a goal, but VR shouldn't be overturning it in the first place. Ref made the wrong call, but VR shouldn't be interfering with that. It's not obvious enough for VAR. There would have to be basically clear separation between them. I disagreed with you.
Who disagreed?
Chris Boyd. Chris Sutton did as well, but Chris Boyd, believe it or not, he disagreed as well. They in the studio. I watched I watched it yesterday. I found on YouTube just the post match from Sky Sports, which I was like, oh, you rarely find this. I'll have a little look, see what's happening. And basically Boyd was heavily on the strikers union side of things and said that's a natural strikers jump. There's no excessive force. There's no real foul. There's contact, but it's a contact sport. He actually said, I think there is enough to overturn it as a clear and obvious error because it's not a foul. But I take your point.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day. I think that applies to Chris.
I doubt he's right twice a day, to be honest. Twice a year, maybe.
You just don't want to get into the area of VR re-refereeing games, right? So that's kind of what it comes.
And that's fair too. But then when we've got such bad referees, then maybe there's a case.
And
for a
then,
bit of
and then
re-refereeing.
the other point I just want to make, and then we can move off the referees, is the shirt pulling, because there was a couple of still images showing Ross County players getting pulling Celtic players in the box, and a certain team from Govan, got a penalty that saved their bacon in the league a week ago by that sort of penalty decision being picked up by VAR. And where was VAR? There, nowhere to be seen. So again, consistency.
I think what that highlights more than anything is that the Huns shouldn't have had a penalty.
No, right? I agree. You've got to expect a little bit here and there, and I think that's fair enough. But that they're
one of the
threshold for them getting penalties.
One of the ones I know is that he's got his shirt's half off his back. Like I think he's got to pick that up. Like he's got a decent. It's like pulled like it is stretched right away from him, and I get that there's always going to be that kind of bits of pulling here and there, but the only way to get it's so frustrating, and it's the only way to get rid of it is to clamp down on it. I've got no issue if they start pulling people up for penalties on that, but they've got to get everyone. They can't have one week and nobody the next week. It's fucking nonsense. So
the one thing you can see in those stills that you're talking about is that O also has his hand on that player. It's not obvious that O is holding the player or not from the images that have been shared. But if both players are pulling, then you tend to either give nothing or give the benefit to the defending team because, that's more likely to end up in a goal otherwise, right?
And the only other ridiculous decision, which again, this is a bit funny, but Kyogo getting booked by John Beaton in the St. Mirren game was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the St. Mirren defender is basically doing an Aussie rules shepherd. So for our Scottish listeners, that's basically AFL. You can sort of try and stop people from getting to the ball, and that's within the rules. But basically, he was doing that in football, which isn't part of the rules because he wasn't even trying to play the ball. So I mean, if anything,
and he was zigzagging as well. Like fair enough if you're at least holding your position, but he was moving back and forth to block him. I thought the decision. Yeah, that was awful. I thought the decision you were going to pick up was in the last one I was going to mention in this most recent match was the drop ball. Like we were in possession, one of their players went down, and then he gave the drop back to was it the keeper maybe took
the keeper,
yeah. So
he gave it to the keeper. I don't know if it was
but I think the Laidlaw or one of the defenders took a knock, but that wasn't stopped immediately. We retained possession, and he stopped the game and then dropped it back. I was like, well, hang on.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
That's
where the ball is when you blow
with us. We were the team in possession, so it was a very poor performance from the ref. And thankfully, VAR obviously stepped in to get the red card right, and that pretty much set the tone for the rest of the game. I obviously both Rodgers and Forrest in their after-match interviews said the classic cliche, it's sometimes harder against 10 men. But I think in this case, it actually maybe was for a lot of the game because they did just double down and dig in, as Anthony said, and didn't really even attempt to have any kind of ambition to do anything other than try and keep us at bay. So yeah, a frustrating first half, and thankfully the Bull came up with another cracker from outside of the box.
And that's what I was actually about to talk about, because despite the fact we'd scored twice, we didn't really look. We had a lot of set pieces, right, and two of them looked kind of decent efforts, and we weren't really getting space down the wing apart from that one time where we did score a goal. And to be honest, other than those two, it felt like aberrations. It really felt like what I was actually thinking just before David Turnbull pings one into the bottom corner is our most likely route to goal here looks like it's going to be a long range effort from David Turnbull. And then like 10 seconds later, he does score one. Now, David Turnbull, I know that those are statistically like a 2 to 3% chance, right? Probably 2% from the kind of range that we're talking about. So they're very low percentage. So theoretically, out of 39, even though we had 39 shots, technically, statistically, we shouldn't have scored one, but we scored two. So I don't know how you read into that. Is this something we should be relying on as a tactic? Like, should we be shooting from range against these low blocks? Should David Turnbull be getting a place in the team because of that? Or should we be trying to find more imaginative ways to break this down? Because, and statistically speaking, these are very low percentage chances.
Well, I mean, it gave me slightly Ryan Christie vibes because obviously he was the notorious one from shooting from everywhere. But I guess when you're set up, when the team you're playing against sets up like that, then you do sometimes have to resort to shooting from distance. Turnbull does seem to have a bit of a knack. I mean, that's 2 in 2 games. So, I mean, it's a stat. And this is why the whole, there's nothing raging in our group chat at the moment about like XG points and, where we should be versus like, how much XG we've got and versus the Huns and all the rest of it. Like, I'm sorry, but like, that to a certain extent, yes, but then you just can't legislate for certain things in football. Like, you can have all the stats in the world, but sometimes somebody just scores a worldie. And I'm not saying David Turnbull's shot was a worldie, but I think Palmer's was probably that was more of a worldie. Like that the dip on that, I mean, that was something else. But I suppose you've got to try something different, because if you keep trying to do the passing around the edge of the box and you're backwards and forwards, well, it's got to come with something. So you either keep trying to pass it into the goal and invariably it breaks down, especially when it's packed and it's set up like that. Or you've got to basically, it's like almost like the Mighty Ducks in ice hockey, where they've got to like play it back so the guy has a chance to have a shot on goal without a defender in his way. And that's almost what it feels like at times, because once we get encroached and encamped on their box, you kind of feel like that's the only way that we're going to score. When it's open or when we're transitioning from defense into attack, we can move the ball quickly. And obviously the Maida to chance got chalked off. I thought Yang was a lot more direct, and he was getting to the byline and cutting some more crosses in. So again, forcing and creating chances. But when you go down the line and then you check back in and then you play it from side to side, that just gives teams every chance just to set up. And then you kind of, you do have to resort to those. And I know you're saying it's like they're low percentage chances, but if you're still having 30 shots on goal, chances are, if they're not going to go straight in, the keeper's going to parry one down at your centre forward, or there's going to, at some point, someone's going to give. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I just think that rather than encamping on their box, we sometimes just have to play it a bit quicker. And I think some players in the team are a little bit guilty of taking maybe 1 or 2 touches more than is necessary, or bypassing a player and just playing that ball a bit quicker rather than having to do the sort of, play it through someone, just play it past them and just get it on moving a bit quicker.
Yeah, and look, we did also Scales still put a couple of balls in over the top. We had one good chance from Kyogo that came from that. Paulo Bernardo gets a chance 1-on-1 with from 6 yards out against the goalkeeper. And those are the ones that are supposed to be like your 30-40% percentage conversion, right? So we missed 2 of those, 2 of those, and we missed them.
Keeper had great saves, right? There was the Yang one late on, point blank down to his left, and he's a great save there. The Bernardo one's, I've no idea how he's just kind of gets something on it. That's a great ball in by Turnbull again, actually. So, he's shifted it, made some space, and he's put an absolute, it's a great run by Bernardo, but Turnbull puts it right in the danger area. I've been, I think I've probably all been reasonable big criticisms of Turnbull, but I was pretty impressed of the level up that he played, especially after the drop off on Wednesday after he missed his penalty. I was actually calling for him to be dropped and to get home in his place, but he played pretty well. And I take the stats on the low percentage, but however the bat is generally, I would say his percentages are higher, because that's, to me, that's his sort of special skill. That's what keeps him around the squad. He scores an above average amount of goals from outside the box, and he is a great striker of a dead ball. It's nice to see Cal have one as well. There was that incident a bit before that where there was a sort of tussle between 2 or 3 of our players, and their guy I think Murray went down in a heap, and I think he was hoping for a free kick and he didn't get it, and the ball was shifted quickly to Cal, and he got in, and I thought that was in, to be honest. It was another really good save. And whilst they are low percentages, and I know Rodgers likes to play the low risk game, we've been crying out for players to have the odd shot from outside the box just to mix it up a bit, especially against the low block. And And Palmer obviously hit a worldie, but we kind of knew he had that in his locker in the bits of footage before we signed. And we know that Carl used to score a few more from outside the box and hasn't really, chipped in for a wee while. And Turnbull, he has got that. So despite some weaknesses across some of the players in the squad, I think there's definitely got a time for mixing it up. But yeah, we created lots of chances close into the box as well, and yeah, more often than not, Laidlaw kind of got something on it.
In terms of as well, another percentage I looked up just because I was curious about it, because we're on the topic. Once Palmer pinged that second one, I was like, oh, 2 of them in one game, right? Like that's quite. And you mentioned individual variance there with Turnbull. If you're interested, my brother had a bet on Turnbull to score from outside the box, and the bookies felt that his odds were 9-1, which is about 11%. So that's quite higher than 2 to 3%. So that's what you say, right? Individual variance. If it was standard variance, then you're talking 50 to 33-1 for that sort of thing. But what I did look up was, and again, this doesn't account for individual teams, but the percentage of corners which become a goal is from going into the box is 1.2 to 1.4%.
It's very low.
I knew.
So
I knew it was low. I had a
70.
stat like that a year or two ago, and I was really surprised. And it came out with, I think it was one of the Celtic guys that, it was a general stat, because obviously we've long bemoaned how bad our corner kicks are in terms of actually getting an output. But so I think, when you hear that stat, it sounds surprising, but then when you hear it across the whole game, it's sort of, I think maybe because in Scotland, teams, especially against us, that's one of their main weapons, is the long throw, the corner, and the free kick. So they probably spend way more time on that. And, they've got Land of the Giants on the go. And historically, we haven't been very good at defending set pieces. I think we've been a bit better this season. Not that I've checked any stats to back that up, but it certainly feels that from the eye test. But yeah, I'd heard that it was a low stat, but it still sounds incredibly low, because I remember, I think that must have dropped off over the years, because you seem to score more goals from corners in our younger days, surely. Because
I remember Sam Allardyce used to play the tactics, right, where if you went route one, then your percentage of attack leading a goal went from 3% to 6% or something like that. His logic was it doubled their chances of getting a goal from an attack if they went long. Fine, it worked for them, I guess, technically, right? He got the England job, however briefly, and but
still seems amazing that happened. But
and even if you go back only 20 years, right, we were still lining up with Bobo Baldi, Josef O'Hara, and Johan Mjalby across the back line, kind of knowing that that this was the kind of attacking route the teams were going to take, either going route one or going set piece or whatever. And also it gave us, there were so many nights under Martin O'Neill, right, where you win 1-0, and it's even under Rodgers in his first spell, 1-0 Boyata was like such a common scoreline, right? So I feel like we have gone away from that, and I don't know if that's good or bad. The nature of a centre back has changed with Carter Vickers and Scales being a Martin O'Neill team. Probably not.
Well, Liam Scales did it for one on the weekend, so I mean, it should have been the statistic right there. But anyway, I won't labour that point anymore. Just a couple of quick things on David Turnbull, and we move on from this. But I think he does hit a decent dead ball, better than Matt O'Reilly. I feel Matt O'Reilly's dead ball delivery leaves a bit to be desired. So I think Turnbull does tend to whip in a better ball. And I think the balance of the team with Calmac, Bernardo being the defensive sort of doing the work allows a Turnbull maybe to have a bit more of a free-flowing role within the team. Admittedly, against 10 men, and against a lower team opposition in the Scottish Premiership. So, take that, reading that with a pinch of salt. But I think for the time being, Turnbull has a place in the team within certain games. If you've I don't think O'Reilly and Turnbull works for me. I still stand by that point, but I just think that if he gets a bit of a free roll, as it were, in inverted commas, then he can produce those sorts of moments, which, like you say, we going in nothing each first, going in 1-0 right on the cusp of half time. It does still change the complexion of the game. So.
And it's we should mention that he's a great little bit of awareness just to shift it slightly just shift it to make the gap. And I watched it back today. The Ross County defender, he just sets himself off balance on that shift, and he loses his right foot and just slides away from him a little bit, and that's what creates the sort of half yard for him not to be able to close him down. And he puts it pretty much in the only place that no one's going to stop it. So it's a really good controlled finish right at as you say, right at the death, and it absolutely changed the clip. You go in, now you feel like you've got what you deserved, as opposed to being in super frustrated, and you give them an opportunity to sort of buoy themselves and go again after half time. So yeah, it was really important goal.
Yeah, and what's more important, and we mentioned this a few weeks ago, is that because our nearest rivals were on League Cup duty, what it did was it gave us an opportunity to open up an 8-point lead. So how many games are we in now? 10? Is it 10 games in?
That was 12.
What, 12? Okay.
12, yeah, because St Mirren was one full round of games.
Yeah.
So this is the first round again. So yeah, 12 games.
So yeah, we now have and I get it, right? Game in hand, etc. But that game in hand is not worth 9 points. So anytime if someone says, 8-point lead, and go, but game in hand, well, okay. You still need to get another 5 points back, even if you win that. Yeah, look, they're going through their dead cat bounce. Still getting help from officials. Was it 66 games now without a penalty conceded in the league?
66 in the league, yes, yeah, more.
If they make it to the winter break, that's 2 full years, 2 full calendar years. Since they last got one at Aber. Well, like the weekends, the Hearts player got sent off, right, and then it got overturned to a Hearts penalty, right? So
yeah, the default was positioned to send off the opposition rather than risk giving a penalty. Absolutely ridiculous. I watched it again. Have you seen the penalty incident?
I have not actually.
The keeper. It's under Clark. I don't know what he was doing.
No. Like that's the penalty they got given.
Yeah.
I think that's marginal. Like unless his leg catches him, his hands certainly don't. He's already going down. I meant the Hearts penalty. Yeah. So yeah, maybe. Yeah. But the Hearts penalty, I'm still not 100% sure of the contact. Right? Like he was adamant there was contact because he said he was. When he got the yellow and then the red, he was so. But the one replay that the highlight showed wasn't particularly clear. But I think there might have been contact from. There must have been a better angle, but we never got to see it on the replay. So, but yeah, just funny that that's the default position. It has to be a dive rather than
so bizarre.
A penalty against them.
I don't understand how this is happening. Like how the last time a team went 2 seasons without conceding a penalty was Barcelona, and they're currently under investigation for that period of time for paying millions of euros to the head of referees at that time. Paying it to his consultancy firm, not to him.
Well, to be clear, I don't think it can be that because I'm pretty sure Rangers haven't got millions of euros to pay to referees.
It's true, but they've got lots of nice handshakes, haven't they? And yeah, I guess they didn't have millions of euros when they were chucking out EBTs either. So I don't know.
True.
Yeah, I'm sure they're figuring something out. So we talked about Turnbull, and I don't know if you listened to the guys earlier, but they talked a lot about this kind of Bernardo versus Holm debate, so you can weigh in on that if you want, but they went into that in quite a lot of depth, so I wouldn't spend too much time on it. They also talked about so I don't know if you guys want to follow up on any of their thoughts on those topics, or if there's any other players you wanted to talk about in particular.
Well, I think last week, Paul and I discussed, I think we discussed it for a wee bit at length, and we kind of felt a wee bit sorry for the guy because he's a developing player. He's young, he needs game time. It's not that he's better than Diogo or whatever. It's just the fact that we're going to need him because he's ultimately the alternative striker when Diogo's not available. So, he needs game time, and you kind of felt that a start is probably due to come from at some point because he needs, as you say, as we said, you come off the bench with 20 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go. The team's already changed by then, so you're generally playing with second string players, so you're not getting the service and the quality that you would necessarily get from starting in the game. So I'm a bit gutted for the guy because he scored a good goal. All right, it got chalked off. It was very, 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 very marginally offside, allegedly. So you're kind of saying, well, he got that goal. You think, well, that's just rewards because I thought he put a good shift. Like, he was thereabouts. He's been again, like, James Forrest, he got on the score sheet and he'd been chapping at the door for weeks. O's, obviously got the winner against St. Mirren. That's a brilliant goal, by the way. That was for a team goal. That's up there with what was scored this season. The number of passes and the interplay, Kyoto to home to O, very sure finish and a great first touch as well, I might add, which kind of made me think that home might have got a wee nod to start. But I guess when you look at the number of other changes that you make, then you're sort of saying, well, maybe that was just a wee bridge too far and, his time will come. But I was thinking about this driving home from work tonight, and I'm sort of thinking that, are we stronger as a team at the moment as we were maybe last season or the season before under Ange Postecoglou? And I'm thinking, no, we're probably not. But I feel in another half a season, with a bit more development, we'll have more options than Ange did at any point in time. Ange had a very core group of 13, 14 players, and that was it. I feel that with home, if we can keep developing we've got Bernardo, Palmer, we've got obviously Abadic come back from injury. Yang's putting in, he's become more direct, which was the criticism that we had of him last week, that there's no end product. You're starting to build up a bit of a depth, a bit of a well. And I know a couple of weeks ago we were bemoaning that, Hibs game, and there was no way to come off the bench or whatever, but it's amazing what 2 games does. But all of a sudden you start featuring some other players and they perform, and you're going, well, actually, there's a player there. And it's how do you keep developing that? And I think that's the thing that we can never really quantify because we're not seeing them at training. But we're dealing with young players, and they need time and they need development on the pitch as much as off the pitch, but on the pitch as well. And Brennan's come out and said that if he signs any players in January, they're going to be ready to go. Like, that we've got enough projects. That's fair enough, but you've got to expect that these players are going to come on a ton. And I know I'm running all over the place here, and forgive me, but Liam Stells, did anyone predict at the start of the season that he would be your first choice defender? He's played the most minutes out of all the defenders that we have. Who saw that coming? But here we are. And is he the answer in the future? Who knows? But you'd say that he has grasped his chance. He's grasped his chance better than any player we've had come out of the blue in a while. Welsh had his chance last season, the season before, and he did all right. But you'd say that Stells has actually grown into the position and actually thinking, well, Narosti and Lagbia are going to have to fight tooth and nail to get that spot back. It's not going to be a fait accompli that they're going to try to sail back in there. Might be a better player on paper, but they're going to have to work very, very hard to dislodge him now because he's done a job.
And the thing about, you don't really swap your centre backs, right? And even though Naroski's probably the long term player in that position, he's not in the Champions League squad either. So there's no rush to get him back in. Like I say, you don't really chop and change your centre backs, other than obviously it sounds like, if you believe some rumours, that CCV might not be able to play 2 games every single week. So we might see a little bit more rotation. If that's true. Apparently he's got some fluid off his knee the other week. So hopefully he can continue to play at least the most important games, and look, that gives other people a go. Last thing I'd say on O, I thought he had a really good game. It's a shame he didn't get another goal because that would have just put the tin lid on it. But you saw this frustration you saw a bit of a wry laugh when the goal was when the Scales goal was chopped off, because he was basically, I barely touched him. And then obviously he looked a bit bamboozled when the offside goal was chopped off. He was in the back of the net, sort of wondering what was going on. But then he was hugely frustrated right near the end when that shot, that one broke to him. And again, he sort of lashed it, and somehow Laidlaw got something on it and blocked another one. But he was a key part of the third goal, because there was a sort of stramash on the edge of the box, and there was 2 or 3 Ross County players going for it, but he's the one that sort of bullied his way in there and managed to get some sort of touch, and that sort of, it then broke out to Palmer, and then obviously he plays a a great ball in with his weaker foot, and Jamesy's nipping in for his 4th headed goal in his Celtic career, apparently.
Over 15 seasons.
And yeah, a goal in 15 consecutive seasons. So while we've got this, I don't know if anyone else has picked up this little stat. Anyone else see the tweet this week about other Celtic players that have scored in consecutive seasons and how many they were?
No.
Anthony's got it. He's digging it out now. I can
finding
tell
it
it's
right
there.
now. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
So
No, I didn't like it. I can't see
so
it.
I've got it here, right? So basically, I think it was maybe in the Sky Sports coverage, classic, no research from those 2 or 3. Somebody went, I can't think if there's a Celtic player that will have scored in 15 consecutive seasons. Well, I can tell you that there is.
Jimmy
There's quite
McGrory,
a
I would
few.
assume.
Jimmy McGrory, 16 seasons for Jimmy McGrory. Do you have we got time? Well, we've still got 15 minutes. Do you want to have a crack at any others, Sean?
Jimmy Johnston, maybe? No, he probably didn't play 15, no.
He did, but he missed. There was one season he didn't. He got injured. So yeah.
Fallon? Sean Fallon?
No.
Bobby Murdoch was on the list, wasn't he?
He got 11. Yeah, so the list started at 11. Bobby Murdoch was at the bottom of this list.
Patsy Gallagher?
Patsy Gallagher also 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we get to a stage where people stop hanging about after that. Thinking Billy McNeil might not have scored in one season.
Nah, there's a couple of there's a couple of obvious ones, and then there's one the quite surprising one. So I'll run through it. John Yogi Hughes 12, Stevie Chalmers 12, Sandy McMahon 13. I'm going to come back to this one because I think it's quite a little quirky one. James Forrest, Patsy Gallagher 15, Jimmy Quinn 15. Paul McStay, 16 seasons in a row he scored. Jimmy McGrory, we've touched on 16 as well. Bobby Lennox, 17 seasons in a row. And Jimmy McMenemy, 18 seasons. I think that goes back to, the 1900s or 1920s around that time. So pretty impressive. But the one that stood out to me, 14 consecutive seasons, Roy Aitken.
Yeah, I think he took penalties for a while.
He did take penalties, right? So in a lot of those seasons, he only scored one goal, typically often from the penalty spot. You're right. You're quite right, Sean. But yeah, 14 consecutive seasons, Roy Aitken. I thought that was pretty impressive because he played laterally at a lot of his career at centre back and certainly more defensive.
And the only Celtic captain whose dad was Jamaican.
Well, there you go. I've got a wee stat here as well.
That's terrible. That's the kind of stuff I expect when I'm on that other channel. Yeah. Dear.
After 12 league games over the last 10 seasons, we have got our 3rd highest points haul in the last 10 seasons. So in last season, we were 33 points at this stage. And then in the 2016-17 season, we were 34 points at this stage. So after that, 32 points is the 3rd best. So I think we're tracking pretty well, especially considering we've had quite a lion's share of away matches early on this season. Trips to...
We've been to Pittodrie, Tynecastle, Easter Road,
Mordor. Yeah.
I'm not even sure that makes much of a difference these days, because you're getting the low block home and away, so I'm not even sure it matters.
I think we play. I do think we play better at home. I do think we tend to win games more comfortably at home. I'm pretty sure the stats would show that as well. But yeah, I just think having all of those in the first round, which means I guess we'll have them all again in the 3rd round. But
but it means the Huns have got a tough run leading up to Christmas. Surely, you think
it does? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. They've got a harder run from basically here to the winter break and maybe just after it.
But they've already recycled their manager, so they're under dead cat bounce phase for that.
Yeah, I know. That doesn't last forever.
Yeah, it doesn't, but it will last for a bit. Lasted for a while for Michael Beale, so it will last until we put them down. It'll, they're not going to come off it before they play us, right? They're not going to get a reality check before they play us, so they're going to have it till end of December, you would say. Right, let's do man of the match unless there's anything else you want to cover before we do that.
No, I think
I was written down burning points.
The Forrest thing was what I was ready to touch on, but we've touched on that, so that's all good. So fair play.
Okay, Anthony, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah,
it's actually not as obvious as it's been in the
this is true, and we haven't discussed.
I think there's a choice. I think there's a choice of 3. So
I think there is, but I'm actually going to go with Louise Palmer because he scores an absolute brilliant goal. I mean, the dip on that, keeper's never getting there. No keeper's getting there for that. He seemed to have a bit of energy when he came on. And then the thing that he did, which he hasn't really done much of since we've seen him, is that he actually got to the byline and cut the ball back for James Forrest, and he absolutely just hangs it in the air. It's just a perfect ball. It's just over the centre defender. It's just hanging. It's just crying out for a finish. And wee Jamesy does the Inspector Gadget, six head out, and 3-0. Thank you very much. So for me, not a cameo. He was on for about half an hour, so decent hang off the bench. But just as you say, Sean, just put the just sealed it and made sure there was no danger of any last minute shenanigans up in Dingwall. So yeah, he's my man of the match this week.
Paul, who's your three, you reckon, and which one?
Well, you can definitely make a case for Palmer, albeit relatively short time, and I did give it to a player that came on. I don't know who I gave it to last time it came off the bench, but the other two for me are Scales and O. But given there wasn't that much attacking to do, I'm going to give it to O.
Yeah, interesting. I thought O was good. I thought Scales and McGregor were both good as well. I thought Yang was in with a shout for me. But I think the one I would give it to, and Palmer obviously, goal and assist. I thought he made a difference in terms of quality, and I'm seeing a lot of the Huns starting to go. Like, why did we not sign? Why did we reject this guy? Like they're starting to
because you didn't have the money. That's why you. That's why you didn't sign him. He rejected you, not the other way around.
Yeah, they came out straight away. As soon as he signed for us, they got that narrative out there, didn't they? We didn't. We chose not to sign you. You didn't choose not to sign for us. We dumped you.
They lost the plot when we scored the 49th minute or the 51st minute, or whatever it was of the first half. They always do that. Oh yeah, so they're like they lost their mind with that as well, the Huns. So it's always good.
But I'm actually going to give my vote to the person who I thought, and I mentioned it already, was the only one who looked like he had something in his locker to unlock Ross County times on Saturday, and that David Turnbull. I get really frustrated with him at times, and I've said in the past that I'm like he's done for me as a Celtic player. Like he's not the quality we need, and I stand by that. But you know, you still have a good game. He's still a past player of the year, and he had a good game on Saturday.
No, he did have a good game on Saturday. You can't knock the guy. I mean, you make the argument that he's not the answer, he's not this, whatever. But at the end of the day, we're reviewing the game that happened on the weekend, and he had a good game. So I mean, and like I said, there's reasons for that, and I think but you're right. He scored a good goal, and I thought his dead ball delivery was good. So I can totally see why you made that call. But this is the first split decision we've had, I think, all season, because usually two of the three of us agree on someone.
Yeah, there's usually a majority that carries it. Sorry, I was just going to say I understand the frustration with Turnbull. He frustrates, I think, every Celtic fan to one degree or another. I think the reason why the frustration is as high as it is because there's clearly a player there, right? There is clearly a player there. His passing, his finishing are both excellent. You got players like Matt O'Reilly coming out defending him in interviews saying, this guy deserves to have more minutes. But then he doesn't seem to have the energy and athletic desire or ability to put the work rate in that he probably needs to be an absolute top player at Celtic. And if that's the case, he's only ever going to fill in around these type of matches. And not really, but I guess a couple of minutes, and I know the earlier show that will have touched on this, I'm sure. But does he keep his jersey for what will be tonight? I guess this will go out on Tuesday. So does he keep his jersey for that, or is it more tactical?
No, Matt O'Reilly comes back in, AJ comes back in. And then
so O'Reilly automatically comes back in. So then it's between Home, Bernardo, and DT for
I think you've got to play Bernardo. You need the defensive. You need that shift. I think Bernardo gives you that, and especially with Atati being out. And I mean, we surprisingly we haven't mentioned Atati because, you know, obviously when you win 3-0, like, you know, you kind of forget about who's not available. But no, I think for me in Europe over there, you're going to need defensive cover, so you're going to need athletes, so you're going to need Bernardo and O'Reilly. AJ comes back in. You've got Maeda on one flank. I'd probably revert back to Palmer starting on the other flank. Kyogo back up front, and then at least you can say, well, we can bring Noah on to put a shift in if we're chasing it, or, you know, we're trying to hang on, or, you know, we're trying to damage control, whatever way it falls. But yeah, I think our strongest team still is, you know, that's pretty clear. But the thing for me is it's having confidence in players off the bench to say, well, can you come on and impact this game? And Yang's showed a few flashes in the last couple of games, you know. So there's a few there's a few players there that are now starting to step up a wee bit. Turnbull. So, you know, if they come off the bench, I think, well, all right, they might be able to do something. But a few weeks ago, you're sort of scratching your head going, well, Brendan Rodgers doesn't trust these players, otherwise he'd have made changes and all the rest of it. So the narrative can shift pretty quickly. But I think we're going to be up against it over in Madrid, to be honest. So
yeah, I think you've called that team right there, and we're not going to.
I agree as well.
It's late in the pod, and the pot noodle guys covered this in a bit more depth. So to give our tuppence worth, we'll probably just do a quick round of score predictions, and then we'll do our final thoughts. So Anthony, what do you think the score will be?
I think we're going to get done 2-0.
Paul?
Well, I think we probably will get done as well, but I'm going to be trying being mildly optimistic and say that we can somehow sneak a point on each.
The pot noodle guys were all predicting Celtic wins, some of them by 2 clear goals. Which was bizarre to me, considering we've conceded 2 goals in every game so far in the Champions League.
I can't see how we keep a clean sheet. So we're going to have to score to get anything.
6 goals across 3 games. Yeah, anyway. I think we're going to lose 3-1.
To me, I think we play quite defensively and we rely on Kyogo and Maeda's pace and or a set piece to try and get something.
Stranger things have happened, but I still see us losing 3-1, right? Plucky loser kind of thing. All right. Any final thoughts, Anthony?
The 4th season of For All Mankind starts getting released from this Friday. So that is on Apple TV. It's an alternative history. Basically, the Russians get to the moon before the Americans. So it kicks off a space race that basically never ends. So those 3 seasons are on Apple TV already. I highly recommend it. It's very, very enjoyable. And every season it skips forward like a decade. So like it just sees the progression. So yeah, it's I really enjoy it, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to that coming out this week coming.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd say it's been on my list to get into, but 4 seasons is I've got a couple other things on the go. Just started Billions, believe it or not, the other day. So yeah. I've got however many seasons of that to get through. Yeah, my recommendation, music recommendation. One of my favorite bands, Everything, have released a new single, Cold Reactor, which is a lead into a new album in, I think, March or April of next year. So that's quite exciting. So yeah, Everything, Cold Reactor ahead of the new album next year.
Cool. I've been watching Killing It, which is a show with Craig Robinson, you know, the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the one with the afro that's the Pontiac. Anyway, he's it's about him trying to kill snakes. It's all right. It's okay. I wouldn't like. It's not a glowing endorsement. Like if you're looking for something to pass the time.
If you're recovering from surgery and you've got time on your hands, stick it on.
It's a bit of a no-brainer show that's kind of made well, even though the subject matter is really kind of poor and terse, to be honest. But yeah, it's it is what it is. Anyway, other than that, I'll just say, do all the social stuff. Please like this episode of the Weekend Review. Please follow us on all the places that we can be found. Say nice things about us to your friends if you talk about us, which you probably won't, but if you do. Other than that, we're hoping for a positive result in Atletico, and we'll speak to you all later. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.